You're listening to the Cars of Carlisle Network, podcast episode number 67. Josh Mazerolle.
Cars of Carlisle is your favorite internationally downloaded podcast about all things automotive. Darren and his CFC team are ever searching for interesting automotive happenings, real stories about real car people, and fun features to inform and entertain you. Each week, the Cars of Carlisle crew brings you show topics ranging from car shows to team adventures to auto racing weekends to behind-the-scenes human interest stories from car nuts that live across town, across the country, or even across the globe. Come join the road trip.
Today you'll benefit from automotive and life wisdom from a genius, highly creative, and technically savvy 30-something from Dublin, New Hampshire. Meet car and truck aficionado Josh Mazerolle, proprietor of Vague Industries, a leading-edge fabrication shop in New England. As a brilliant fabricator, chassis and suspension guru, stuntman, marketing promoter, and automotive photographer, Josh has more talents than you can carry in a Baja truck. And on top of that, the man in the cowboy hat is a modern-day, common-sense, straight-ahead philosopher. Like Cars of Carlisle, Josh is 110% focused on our hobby in building car community through everyday kindness of strangers turned friends. Did we mention Josh transformed a 1977 Toyota Hilux into an insanely cool vehicle with a twin-turbo LS engine swap? This Armageddon-ready monster has crisscrossed America multiple times. Yes, this one-of-a-kind wide-body pickup with custom 10-inch fender flares puts out over 1,000 crank horsepower on pump gas. Off to New Hampshire we go. So let's get revved up.
Hello and welcome back, Cubers, to your favorite informative automotive podcast. I am your trusted host, Darren, and this week we are talking with our new friend from Dublin, New Hampshire. We met him while on the Rally North America event, and Josh has been passing up and down 81, making some trips down into Virginia and various areas up and down the East Coast. Every time he was coming through Carlisle, I tended to be away or was out of town, but we were able to catch up with him by a conference call, and we recorded that interview for you here. So I hope you enjoy that. Before we get into that, just want to say thank you to all of you, our Cubers, for continuing to be fans, spreading the word, letting others know about it. I know a special shout out to Joseph in the Boise, Idaho area. He continues to tell all his friends and family about this podcast and really growing that. People are subscribing, rating and reviewing, giving us 5 stars, and we thank you guys for all of that.
Hello, Cubers. This is Darren,
continue to spread the word.
I have a new friend of the show of Cars of Carlisle, and that's Josh
also want to mention we are
is out of
on the
Keene,
heels
In fact,
of the
Josh, thanks,
Corvettes of Carlisle
for being
coming
part
up.
of this by
Excited
phone
to be actually taking the Z06 onto
I'm
the
glad
field.
to be here,
We're talking
it's
to
remote,
Lance Miller as well as Jody Morrison here in the next week or so. Have time with them over at the Carlisle events. So for those that are interested in the Corvettes of Carlisle, that's coming up real soon. In addition, we have a couple other local car nut people that we're going to have on the show here in the next 3 to 4 weeks, so stay tuned for that. We are excited about the content. We have the Sam and Lou, the second edition of their Intracast coming up within the next 5 weeks. So a lot happening here at Cars of Carlisle Network, and we're so glad that you are a part of it. Let's jump into this week's trivia question, and that is this. The Toyota Hilux, and that is mentioned, you'll know that in the interview, Josh, it's one of the feature cars that we will be talking about and highlighting. But the question I have for you is, what year did Japanese manufacturer Toyota begin to manufacture the Hilux? That answer at the end of the podcast. So now let's go to the phone interview with our friend Josh from the Dublin, New Hampshire area.
Hello, Cubers. This is Darren, and I have a new friend of the show of Cars of Carlisle, and that's Josh Mazerolle. He is out of Keene, New Hampshire. In fact, Josh, thanks for being part of this by phone tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, even though it's remote. It's It's good to be part of this.
We didn't work. You came back down through Pennsylvania, and it didn't work out. I wasn't around the home studio at the time, but thanks for taking this call. Just to give everybody a quick background, how we met Josh is Scott and I, while on the Rally North America trip, it took us through Keene, New Hampshire, which is known for its beautiful murals that are painted on the walls of the buildings throughout town, particularly down along Main Street. And as we came back to get in the car to continue on to the next, Josh had pulled in and we were talking LS engine stories and what have you, and swapped business cards and got to talking and pretty much became fast friends.
Yeah, pretty much.
And like all things, it's usually the vehicles and the cars that bring us together, and that's the great part of it all. So, Josh, I know you said we could probably do 3 episodes, and I see future episodes out of all this, but you have a business, a custom shop, Vague Industries up in Keene. But we won't talk about that and how you got into business and how you started all that, but can you give the highlight reel of just how you knew that you were a car guy born and raised?
Yeah. Well, maybe you can help guide me through this, but I've been in the car since I was a little kid. 3-4 years old, had my Power Wheels. I used to go up there and wash that thing and use my fake tools on it. And I remember I rolled it over and I cracked the bumper, and my mom says I cried for 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, not because I was hurt, but because I was bummed I hurt my truck.
Right.
But I did my first frame-up restoration when I was 9 years old with my dad.
Oh my gosh.
The Toyota pickup, and I cut the front suspension out of it, and we did a solid axle swap, which was pretty common nowadays, but back then, 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, that was not a common thing.
Right.
When I was in kindergarten, my teachers kept a journal for me, and because I couldn't really write, and it said Josh made a friend, Christopher. Josh likes to draw, and what you want to be when you grow up. Down at the bottom, there's check boxes like fireman, policeman, secretary, nurse. And my teacher had checked other, and then wrote in build monster trucks, not drive monster trucks or be a professional baseball player. Like, Josh wants to build monster trucks when he grows up. And
nice.
I'm 32 now, and I build monster trucks. And so, I make a lot of the most important decisions in my life based on what the 10-year-old version of myself would want. And I build monster trucks for a living. I drive a Hot Wheels every day.
Yes, you do.
I keep Reese's under my bed, and I eat whatever I want. And if that means it's ice cream for breakfast, that's what Josh has.
I like it. Well, and just what I've seen in some of the videos off of your website and everything else, driving across country, just doing things off the cuff and completely, I shouldn't say carefree, that's not fair, but just living in the moment, enjoying the day, seizing it, and realizing that we're not guaranteed anything. So
that's 100%. I've got a couple of sort of mottos. When I was little, I started saying, I thought it was cute back then, but it's kind of true now, that I said, what's life if you don't live?
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of lived by that for a while, and I've got another motto that I've coined, that I believe that experience is the currency of life, and the more experience you have, the richer you are. But I've come to learn with age that I believe that negative experience holds more value than positive experience. Because, life's full of mountaintops and swamps. And, you go up to the peaks, to the tops, and the only way to keep moving forward with life is to start heading down the other side into the swamp. And, you're bound to spend a lot of your life in the swamp, and you need to learn to appreciate that, or you're going to have a miserable life. Because that's just part of it. And if you can find the value in it, then you can leverage that and have a happier overall.
It's pretty prophetic, and I've been following and checking out your YouTube videos and links off of your site and some other things, and I've heard you say that, because that currency comment, that analogy is brilliant, and there's a lot of truth to that. And the fact is that in life, and we don't need to, I know we're waxing poetic, but we remember the high moments, those very, very top summits, but you're exactly right that the predominant part of anyone's life is walking the valley floor, and unless you can get comfortable in your own skin and know how to navigate it and deal with the bugs and everything else that comes with the swamp, it's going to be a rough travel.
Yeah, and I've, like, not to be a one-upper or a one-downer or whatever, but, like, I've been in some of the lowest of low places, and what I've learned from that is, like, the best stories come from the worst experiences every time, hands down. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's sort of where I get my beans off, is just doing these crazy things that I'm willing to make sacrifices and commitments that other people won't.
Right.
And in the end of the day, like, I have these crazy life experiences, and I've got this little pickup truck that is pretty well known. It's a 77 Toyota Hilux. It's got 2006 Crown Vic front and rear suspension in it. It's super, super wide. I've got 10-inch flares on each side. It's got a twin-turbo LS motor in it. It's making about 1,100 at the crank. And, yeah, that's on pump gas, too. So this has got a monster transmission, 4L80 in it. It's pretty nutso. And I've driven that thing 34,000 miles in the past 2 years, and it's been across the country 9 times. I don't have a single gauge in it. I don't have a temperature gauge or oil pressure. I don't have a fuel gauge.
I know you have that. You've got the cardboard up on the what would be dash, which is great.
Yeah. Yep. The rare JDM whiteface piece of paper written on it with Sharpie.
Right. No, and I actually am a big fan of that truck just through your Hoonigan video and everything else. I mean, you have earned some mad respect with what you've done with it and where you've gone. But the fact is that you enjoy it. You don't. If it, I think in that Hoonigan video, you kind of clipped the one, blew out the taillight as you clipped the one wall and you just kind of like, hey, it's kind of what happens. You just keep smiling and keep moving.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I smashed it against a shipping container, and then I was just in the moment. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this match. And then immediately whipped it into the other side of the shipping container and just smashed the other side. And so they were all shutting down after we filmed that first Hoonigan episode. And everybody's trying to go home, and I held them there late because I'm a mess sometimes. And so now I got a smashed up taillight, and they're like, all right, well, see you later. I'm like, no, that can't really. So I snuck into their lunchroom. I went to the fridge, and I stole a Ziploc container, like tinted red lid, and then I cut it up and taped it over my broken taillight because the bulb was still good. And then I drove it 3,000 miles home like that.
Resourceful. You got to have it that way. That is cool. Well, I don't mean to drag you back to the bayou and to the bog, but you mentioned about some of the best stories, the best opportunities and learning things come from those low points. Is there any one or two that you'd like to share just to kind of illustrate that?
So the truck itself is kind of a memorial of bad times that have been, restored by the kindness of strangers who've expected nothing in return. Is that some of
the? I know you have a lot of Sharpie signatures all over the Hilux. Does that lead into the part of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened was, I'll sort of back up a little bit and tell a story to lead into this one. Was a bunch of years ago, my best friend and I, who actually he lives in Mount Joy, which is just outside of Elizabethtown.
Yeah.
Close to you.
Sure is.
He was building a school bus, kind of as a tour bus for his motorcycle stunt team, so that he didn't always have to put his riders up in a hotel. And it was a tiny house. It was basically what he was building. It was a really nuts thing. And we had talked, like I think most people have done at some point in their life, hey, we got to finish this bus and drive it around the country. Wouldn't that be cool? And something that I've learned is if you just say, hey, next summer we should, or sometime we should, that time never comes, and it never actually happens, and then you don't ever do it. So we tried to be a little more specific. We were like, hey, let's do it this spring, which was still pretty vague. and we're going to just drive around the country for a month or two and go sightsee and do whatever was on our bucket list. Well, he called me up and he's like, hey man, this was near the end of the year. He says, I just got a job offer making $50 an hour, and I'm not currently working. And if I take this job, I'm not going to be able to go on the trip with you because I have to sort of commit to this sort of long term. I can't just work for a few months and then take off in the spring. So I was like, well, don't take the job.
Right.
He said, yeah, he's like, well, I can't do that. I don't have any money right now. Like, well, I don't have any money either, man. But instead of going in the spring, why don't we leave on the 1st of the year? And that's in like 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. I'll quit my job right now. I'll go down there and help you finish the bus early, and we'll leave on the 1st, ready or not. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we did. And we filmed this little documentary series on artisans and craftsmen of dying trades. And we found all these people through the internet. And we went all around the country. We let the people decide our route, and essentially we got to immerse ourselves in local culture because we worked with them for a few days.
Oh,
and,
wow.
These are anything from custom motorcycle builders to leathersmiths and woodworkers and glass blowers. But we didn't take the highway anywhere around the country. We took half a year off doing this. And we just sort of figured out how to make it work. We're just resourceful, and we put the bus up for chartering services. But while we were out there in Phoenix, we found this 1977 Toyota pickup that had been abandoned in the desert for 15 years. So we're like, I got to have that, because we're both Toyota nuts, a little white pickup truck. And we had tried to find out who owned it. Finally found the owner, my friend Doug did most of the footwork here, and was trying to buy it from him. The guy was like, nah, I've had that truck forever, and I'm not going to get rid of it. And then every year, like, hey, you want to sell that thing? Hey, you want to sell that thing? For years. Mm-hmm. Finally, the guy let it go for $250. Oh. Took a week or two to get it running, and just wanted to drive it from Phoenix to New Hampshire in stock form. Leave it alone. Didn't want to ruin it. It was fine the way it was.
Right.
But I blew the motor up in New Mexico, and I idled 120 miles down this desert dirt road. For 80 miles of it, there was no cell phone service. There was no telephone wires, no barns, houses. I didn't see a single person. Wow. I saw one wild burro.
Oh my gosh.
I met up with this Craigslist stranger in the middle of the night who helped me do a motor swap in this thing. I never met this guy. Wow. He was super dry on the phone and sort of hard to read, but I worked a deal where he would sell me the motor out of one of his parts trucks and also rent use of his facilities. And I didn't know if his facilities were like a gravel driveway or a full shop or whatever, but I knew he had a parts truck, so he must have some tools and some place to work on it. Turned out he had a really nice hobby shop at home, and he stayed up all night working on this with me, and he worked just as hard as I did, which was a surprise to me. I figured he was going to say, well, here's the toolbox, I'll check on you in a little bit.
Right.
But he stayed up all night with me swapping this motor out. I left Phoenix on Tuesday, and I had to be in Dallas Thursday at 3:30, and I drove as long and as hard and as many miles as I possibly could, and blew this motor, stayed up all night, rebuilt the motor, and blew tires, and I did a valve adjustment on the side of the road with a beer can, a tire iron, and 4 zip ties, and well, I know the beer can is .0037 thick, so 3 layers is 12 thou, and 2 layers is 8 thou, but I made it to the airport to pick up my friend 3 minutes after she walked out onto the concrete.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was nuts. But that's sort of where I saw this, on that bus trip, when I started meeting with these artisans and craftsmen and immersing myself in local culture and not just driving by on I-40 and seeing everything from the highway. My eyes opened a little bit to the fact that, all these people all over the country are just regular people. Mm-hmm. And they all are, got families and jobs, and they all have, almost all of them have good intent. And then I was reminded again with this pickup when this stranger, the dude's name is Joe True, out of Amarillo, and that people are good. And then, so this was supposed to be a week trip to drive this truck straight back. It took me 3 months, 3 motors, and by the time I got it home, it was wide-bodied on Crown Vic suspension with a turbocharged LS motor in it. And everybody who helped me and expected nothing in return signed the B pillar of the truck.
Oh, nice.
So I've got hundreds and hundreds of signatures on this truck, and they're everything from Joe Blow, or Joe True, to big name dropping TV stars, Aaron Kaufman, and like we got a bunch of legit people on here that just want to be part of the story.
Yeah.
And whether it was a screwdriver to sort of keep me going, or hey man, this thing really needs a turbocharger. Here you go.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you have it over there on the starboard side coming up through the hood. I mean, it's pretty badass. It's cool. It's
kind of gotten out of control now. It's way out of control.
Well, that's okay. That's kind of what it lends itself to the whole Hot Wheels theme. That's what I like about it. It's that's really what it is. I drive a rusty Hot Wheels every day, and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. It's natural patina. That's what it is.
And I think that a lot of people really like the rat rod thing about it. Mm-hmm. But truthfully, between you, me, the hat rack, and the rest of your listeners, I hate rust more than anything. And this whole truck is brown because we built the wide body on it because Discovery Communications said, hey, we want you on the show with Motor Trends. You got 10 days to get to Tucson from New Hampshire. Then the truck was in 1,000 pieces. So we threw the truck together, we're on the road, and I don't have brakes, the steering hardly turns because the column's rubbing against the manifold, and one of my friends down in South Carolina who I'd met. So this is the story that I wanted to tell. As far as like one of the sort of touching stories. Mm-hmm. I had made it to Greenville, South Carolina on my original trip home. And, we've got the inside of the tire lines up with the outside of the body. So it looks like a roller skate. We've got the engine sticking out the hood, the turbo sticking out the hood, and the truck like barely runs. It's stumbling. It feels like spark plug is burnt out or something. Mm-hmm. We can't really figure out what's going on. So I met this, every time I'm at a gas station, there's a crowd of people that just wants to look at it, like, what is this wild contraption? And I'm a fairly personable guy anyway, so I'm talking to everybody, and we're like 11:30 at night, and there was this one guy standing there that I was talking to just to sort of be polite, but he didn't really seem that interested in cars. Didn't seem like a hardcore car guy. And then he was like, yeah, I work for a shop down the road, Carolina Rod Shop. I'm like, oh, cool. We talked a little bit more, and he's like, yeah, you have to stop by sometime. I was like, yeah, next time I'm in the area. Because I'm really, at this point, we're 3 months in, and I'm super burnt out on living on the road. Mm-hmm. I'm living in the fornicatorium, showering in a rain gutter in a hurricane, and like it's just, I'm over it. I got to go home.
Right.
So this dude's like, oh, I'll show you right now. And as much as I didn't want to, and I just wanted to get on the road and leave, he had tools. He wanted to help, and I just went. So I show up there, and we work on it until about 3:30 in the morning. He's like, hey, man, I have to go to work at like 7:30 or something in the morning, and it's almost time to go to work. I have to go home and get a couple hours of sleep. I'm sorry, we have to stop doing this. I was like, no big deal. I'll find some place to camp, and I'll figure it out in the morning. He goes, all right, well, you could camp here if you wanted. I'm like, oh, what, like out in the back corner of the parking lot? And he goes, no. We'll just stay right here in front of this door because the Mustang's in the paint booth. That's not coming out. This isn't coming. You're fine right here. So he leaves. I pull out an air mattress, and I set it up right in front of my truck, between my truck and the bay door of the shop. Now, the Carolina Rod Shop does super high-end work. They've got 3 big facilities. They've got a fabrication facility. They've got a paint and body facility, and then they've got a whole other building just for finished assembly. And somehow by the body shop, and I go to sleep in my sleeping bag, and this dude's name is Julian. Julian says, I'm going to wake up extra early, text the guys, let them know what's going on, so there's no surprises tomorrow. So Julian didn't wake up extra early. He woke up extra late.
I think I know where this is going.
So it was like, I don't know the exact times, but, work starts at 8. It's like 8:45, and I wake up, and there's people, like, sidestepping and shimmying and shuffling around me to get into work. Like, there's this homeless bum with this rowdy hot rod parked in front of their shop. And the weird part is they were trying to be respectful to the sleeping bum and not wake him up.
Did you have the Stetson tilted over your face or something to add to the whole scene, or?
So Julian rolls in at like 9:20, and big boss is like, Julian, I need to see you in my office right now. Julian tells him what's going on. He's like, listen, these guys are like the American hot rodders right here. They're driving this thing across the country. They've built it on a road trip through the kindness of strangers, and they're broke down. So instead of them doing whatever they could have done, they basically shut the shop down. It was all hands on deck to fix and diagnose this truck, and it ended up being chafed wiring from a junkyard harness that somebody was not nice to when they removed the engine. So they fixed the wiring. They set me up with a bunch of stickers, T-shirt, apparel, a big box of tacos, and a phone number to call if I ever need anything anywhere.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so these strangers became friends, and then some of these friends over time have become family. Like these guys, this Carolina Hot Rod Shop family. I'm driving this truck out to Tucson for this Discovery Channel thing with Motor Trends, and they hear what's going on. They hear I'm on a super time crunch, like way time crunch. I wanted to leave on, we'll say, Monday, but I stayed up, for several days trying to get this thing together. And when I put it in drive in the morning, the transmission was smoked. So I lost an entire day sourcing and replacing a transmission. And all of those hours I had allotted for sleeping. So now I'm not allowed to sleep on the way across the country. I just have to drive.
Wow.
So, yeah, the Carolina Rod Shop sees what's going on. They're like, hey, we want to help, because it was a race that I had to do. It was the network who purchased the show was actually Facebook, and the show is called the 3K Hoopty Challenge.
Okay.
There's 6 episodes, I think. But we had to go drag race, and the hot rod guys were like, hey, man, if you can make an extra trip way out of your way to come down to South Carolina, we'll put nitrous on that thing for you. So I made a several 100-mile detour when I was already late to go to the Carolina Rod Shop to throw nitrous at it.
Nice.
But what was good about that is I had been up for days, so I am totally smoked, and I have fresh blood there. So we've got, 6 guys that just woke up, and they're ready to go, and they're just amped to work on something, and they're fresh. All I had to do is, man, pull that column out. I'm going to take a nap. Beautiful.
Now, to make up some of the time, did you have to actually hit the bottle on the way west?
So that's what's crazy is I had never actually got on it. I've never done a launch. I just had to get there.
Okay.
So this truck was 100% untested, and I didn't want to. I'd rather blow it up on the track than blow it up trying to get there.
Right.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's kind of the general story-ish. I mean, like I said, hundreds of signatures. Each signature is the time that I broke down, which is a negative experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the worse it is, I don't know what else to call it. You know, if you believe in religion or anything, it could be God but like I call it magic. That's when the magic is. When you're in your worst, I've never not made it yet.
That's incredible. Yeah, and that's good wisdom right there. And it seems to me that you've probably gained. You mentioned about the friends turned family. Probably some of your closest adopted family has come from some of those hardest hardships.
100%.
Yeah, that those Sharpies are important. Yep.
It's hard to explain. It's really hard to put in words. It gets you goosebumps really when you get right down to it.
Mm-hmm.
So my whole mission has been to build community and expose the kindness of strangers in America. And depending on your perspective, like I've had people come at me and say, well, you're just a professional panhandler. And in the end of the day, like I'm not looking for handouts. I'm looking to build relationships with people, and I'm using, you know, these automobiles as a focal point. Well,
and that's, I think, why we became fast friends that day on Main Street when we had to throw it in reverse and get out of that diagonal parking spot and get heading north. But we resonate with the whole what we're trying to do, and yes, the vehicles are great, whether they're mud boggers or Lamborghinis or rat rods.
Yep.
But it's the people behind the wheel. It's the stories, the community, the camaraderie, and what I like about it is our hobby. The vehicles themselves are the great equalizer, and you know that probably better than anybody, Josh. I mean, you can be standing next to an open engine bay, and the guy may have $50 to his entire name, talking shop with a guy who is a multi-billionaire, and they don't care where they are economically. They just are good friends because they're talking over something they both love.
I had a super cool experience a couple months ago. So I just got back I did a 6-week trip where we did 13,000 miles and 2 full builds. So that was a full-time, like, no sleep, just drive, just build, just thrash. And there was a point in there when I was in, I think, south side of Las Vegas, and a water pump let go. So I'm at a gas station, and one of my rules is after this first trip, when I tried to drive it home in stock form and came back with a boosted LS thing, was I'm not allowed to bring any more tools than I can carry in one hand. The rest, I need to rely on the kindness of strangers. And what that does is it forces you to engage with incredible people. Because the only people who are actually going to help are incredible people. So you make these connections that you wouldn't have otherwise made if you just use money or a huge toolkit to solve your problems.
That makes sense.
So I have to talk to cool people, and I have to build these cool relationships. And that, to me, is where the magic is. So when I was out in Vegas, outside of Vegas, I had to do a water pump. And I didn't have all the tools. I needed like a big, massive wrench to get the mechanical fan off the water pump. And I ended up changing the water pump with this Spanish guy that he didn't speak English. So there was a language barrier there. And we're just doing like charades and hand signals. And he was like, you could like see the cartoon light bulb pop up in his head. And he's like, oh, runs to his car and grabs the thing and grabs a hammer, and it's exactly the right size wrench. And like the cars are the ultimate equalizer, and they also are the unifier.
Yes, that's a great way to say it too. I mean, obviously you had the impasse of not a really shared language, but when you're pointing to a part and like you said, you're doing kind of the motions, you're both understood and you know what to do and how to do it. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That was
one of the coolest things for me.
That is a great cool. I mean, I like that whole aspect of it. Would you say that in all of your travels and your 32 years, Josh, can you narrow down to you what might be one of the most rewarding people-based or heartfelt or like kind of touching moment? I mean, I know you've had plenty of goosebump moments with car people, but is there one that you could just you could hang your hat on for sure?
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of them that have been incredible and amazing, and there's one that like, I've changed a lot of people's lives, which is weird to say, because to me, I'm just me, you know. But you don't know how much effect or impact you could have on somebody else's life by essentially just being you, as long as you're the right person at the right time for that right person. Like, you know, I've come through, met this dude on the way through that was in a super low place in his life, like, you know, contemplating suicide and, you know, having a bad time with his girlfriend and just in this massive depression. And, you know, in his mind, everything is as bad as it gets, doesn't get any worse. So I come through on the first time through with this truck, this first trip, and I come rolling in on a tow strap, actually like a cheap ratchet strap, and I have been living in this truck for 3 months. I've been living in a barn. I've been, you know, sleeping in front of the shop, and in some ways, some of the worst times ever. You know, I slept in the truck when it was 16 degrees out. I woke up and the inside of the truck is frozen, and I'm sort of telling my story. This guy was almost more of a bystander in the situation, but he's seeing what I'm doing and how they're miserable times, but how I am, like, sort of perpetually optimistic, and how much fun I had doing these terrible, miserable things. And this vehicle that is absolutely not even close to, like, complete or finished by basically anybody's standards, but I'm out there, I'm driving it, I'm enjoying it, and I'm having the time of my life making all these connections and friends, where so many people, and I've been a victim of this myself in my early years, I held such high standards for the projects that I was working on, but there's no way that I would ever complete them. And I sort of pulled back a bunch, and this truck and this experience has taught me that getting it on the road is far more valuable than getting it on the road perfectly 10 years from now.
Yeah. Yep.
And I've been able to sort of shed light and gain perspective on that for a lot of people, just in doing what I'm doing. Like, just go out there and do it.
Well,
it doesn't need to be perfect. You're not perfect.
No, and I was going to say, I think that wisdom for the 77 Hilux can be applied to a lot of things in life. I mean, you can stay on the sidelines and say, well, I have to wait for the perfect partner or spouse or whatever. I have to wait for that perfect promotion, that perfect job, the perfect house, whatever it is. And as John Lennon said, you know, life happens is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And I think that you're right on the money with, you got to embrace it and learn on the fly and adjust as you go.
Just go for it. Yeah, adjust the sails. It's 100%. Go for it. Just do it.
Yeah. No, I get it. Well, of all the, I mean, you've logged some serious miles just in the Toyota Hilux itself, but of all your times on the road and meeting great people, like you said, building that community, exposing the goodness in the average person, have you had one of those, you should have maybe not come back from it, kind of scary, near death, close to the edge kind of experiences somewhere out there on the open road?
So that's kind of funny, because, like, I know that every tough guy wants to say this, but I'm not afraid of anything. The only thing I'm actually afraid of is, like, disappointing people who I respect greatly or value highly. Sort of social repercussions.
Okay. Yeah.
But physically, like, I'm ready to go right now. I've lived more of a life in 25 years than most people will ever live their entire life. And I'm good with it. So because of that, like, I think that not to sound cryptic, but I think that death is arguably one of the most important parts of life. And if you're going to fully love life, you need to learn to embrace death. This is all my opinion. And if you don't love death, you'll never fully love life. So you need to be able to take it to the edge to get maximum out of life. Like I think I've faced death more times than most anybody I know. More near-death experiences. Not that I've seen the light at the end of the tunnel and died on the hospital bed and came back 6 minutes later, but I come pretty close to seeing the pearly gates quite often. Like just this weekend, when I was driving down past you, we were going to hook up, but schedule didn't work. I drove 400 miles without any brakes, which I know that there's going to be a lot of haters that say I put everyone's life at risk, and which is partially true. But there's plenty of close moments just then.
Yeah, that's true. And there are times that if you over concentrate on how close to the edge, that almost exacerbates the potential of something going wrong too.
Right. Yeah, so I do all these trips, right, and I have all these magic moments, and I'm one of those guys that I found that I get dipped in shit and come out smelling like roses. But what people forget is I got dipped in poop first.
Right.
All they see is I smell like roses. So,
yeah, there's nothing champagne-like about that.
Yeah, so I got a partner that I work with that he went on a road trip with me last year, and he's asking, he's like, Josh, how do you do it? Because like I said, it's magic. It's the power of God or whatever you believe in, but it's magic. And we ran out of gas in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. We're on I-80, just a little bit west of you. Yeah. And my partner is like kind of a tense, stressful guy that needs to have a plan in order to be calm and cool. So immediately, just to sort of diffuse the situation, I call AAA just so that he doesn't get all up in arms and stress about stuff. And now that I'm on the phone with AAA, he's cool and peaceful and fine now that we got a plan. AAA, I was on the phone with them for like a half hour. They were trying to figure out whose district I was in and where I was, and just on hold. And I was getting kind of frustrated because I know that if I did things my way, I would probably already be back on the road. And I'm only doing it this way so that my partner doesn't get all grumpy. Right. So I grab a piece of cardboard out of the back of the truck while I'm on hold with AAA. I grab a Sharpie and I wrote, "Need gas, won't kill you," and hold it up on the side of the road. Under 2 minutes, this dude named Rudy Unknown pulls over and gives me 2 gallons of gas, shakes my hand, and I'm on to the next. I made it to the next exit for a gas station, and that's when my partner was like, "I still don't get how you do it, Josh." I said, "You got to just release control. Just give in to the process. Trust the process. And if you're on the religious side, trust God. Miracles will happen. But it's just give in to the process. Go for it and release control. Just adjust the sails."
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to say it. Sort of like you can paddle like crazy, or you can just go with the current and let it take you.
Yeah, why fight it?
Now, any amazing moment? I mean, obviously you've done drag racing, you've competed in things, you've done some. I mean, I've seen the YouTube videos, some incredible hellacious burnouts. Has there been a moment or two that you just sometimes, if you're in the garage and you're wrenching, you just have a smirk, you smile to yourself like that was a fun time kind of thing?
So there's a predictable thing that happens with me. Every single time it happens, I have an uncontrollable smile. Okay. I was living in Virginia for a little bit. I had an 85 Toyota pickup, little 2-wheel drive, had a Chevy small block in it, and chromoly cage, but it looked stock on the outside, a little sleeper. Well, I had a 150-mile commute every single day, and there was this little back road through the country that if I could get it up to 100 miles an hour, there was an 80-foot tabletop that I could clear, and it was smooth as glass. And I did that tabletop every single day in both directions for 2 years. So that truck had more hang time on it, than American Airlines. But anytime my tires come off the ground, I have an uncontrollable smile, like involuntary.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
I've got a pretty good resume on that. Like 10 years ago, I hosted this exhibition-style motorsports event. The event was called Boulder Bash, and it was basically like rock crawling, like the Jeeps and buggies, and it was like endurance rock racing that I condensed and put between grandstands and a fairground.
Nice.
And we put big piles of boulders, and then I also put jumps in there. And back then, these rock racers weren't really doing jumps. I would just put it in there in hopes that somebody would. And, I've got 1,500 to 2,000 people in the grandstands waiting for somebody to do this jump, and none of the rock crawlers were doing it. When, the biggest, baddest guy wouldn't do it, I knew I was in trouble. So, really, all I did was set expectations for the fans and then let them down. So, I called in a buddy, and he dragged the car over, and it was a fairly new Cadillac DeVille at the time, and he was like, "You can have it if you jump it." I said, "Okay." And he thought I was, calling his bluff, or he was calling mine. But we ended up putting a duct tape 01 on the door, and I sent it. And we ended up putting 3 people in the car, my announcer, like the VP of environmental affairs, and it was dumb. So I did this event a couple of times, and it became known, like, there's this part of a stunt show, really, is that Josh is going to jump something stupid. We have to go to the Boulder Bash.
Right. Can't miss it.
One of the last ones I did at that location, I brought a Ford Explorer to jump, and I was getting ready to do it. We're hyping the crowd, and I'm walking over, I grab my helmet, I'm walking to the vehicle, and my buddy, Scott, big man, over 300 pounds, he starts coming with me. I'm like, "What's going on?" And he goes, "Well, I'm coming with you." I'm like, "Dude, this is going to be way bigger than the last one." And he's like, "Well, you're doing it." I'm like, "All right, dude, you're an adult. You're older than me. You can make your own decisions.
Right.
Let's go." And so we got the dozer out, we pushed the pile up, and I hit it at, 65 miles an hour or so. And I went about 70 feet, and then when I landed, I bounced back up sideways for another 20 feet or so, and I'm counter steering because I'm sideways in the air, and I'm back on the throttle, and I'm getting ready to do another lap. Well, Ford has an inertia switch that killed the fuel pump, which is, I was bummed about because I was going to do another lap and hit it again, but
Wow.
it ended up being a good thing because we jumped so big that my passenger broke his back.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh! How many weeks of traction did that cost?
It was not good because he was like kind of a real big deal in the off-road community, at least locally, because he did a lot for the community.
Wow.
He was the vice president of environmental affairs, sort of a liaison between the motorsports heads and the greenies in charge.
Right.
At the state level. So a lot of people look down on me pretty hard for that because I kind of broke their fearless leader.
Right.
In a reckless act. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you will, talk a little bit about Vague Industries, your business, and whatever you'd like to share with the Cubers about it.
Okay. So back in that era, like 10 years ago, I hosted that rock crawl, and it was called the Boulder Bash, and I sort of did that as like a marketing tactic. So what I was really trying to do was market my business, which at the time was called Dr. Custom Works. It was an off-road fabrication business. I was trying to market my business to locals that were, interested in what I do. So I figured the easiest way and most cost-effective way to efficiently access, 3,000 locals that are interested in what I do is to host an event, and then I have a captured audience, and I can shove whatever I want down their throat. Not only do I have a captive audience, but they paid me for me to advertise to them instead of the opposite, which it normally is if you advertise through radio or magazine or whatever. So I started it as a marketing toy, and that business, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or so I did that, and I was young. I was like 20 years old when I started this, and like I had the skills and the talent. I just didn't know anything about life or communication with customers or just business in general. I knew nothing, so it was wearing me out bad. I got burnt out hard, and I decided that I'm all done. I want to move down south, start a new life, get a job as a regular machinist or something, get a Camry and a dog and an apartment, and no longer be in magazines and features and newspapers, just be normal and disappear. Well, my shop ended up burning down. I lost everything. And at that time I was like, I'm never doing this again. And if I do, I'm not doing anything like I did last time. And I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that whatever I was doing was not healthy for me. A lot of fun, but in the end of the day, it just didn't work. So it was, 3 or 4 years later, I finally got back on my feet, back to square, paid everybody back, because it was a big disaster. And all these cards just landed in my lap, and it just, like, the shop location, the employee, literally everything was set that if I didn't open a shop, it would be a self-destructive decision.
Right.
So I started this business called Vague Industries, and it's called Vague Industries because what we do is a little bit vague. We are, I specialize in chassis and suspension, and that's pretty much across the boards, whether that's, road course, drag racing, monster trucks, desert race cars, whatever. Chassis and suspension is my game. Okay. And that's what we're most well known for is, like our tube work and manufacturing CNC cut, chassis and CNC bent chassis. We're making axle housings. I just started manufacturing my own forged aluminum wheels. We have put a couple of prototype coilover shocks together, so we've got a lot more work on that before that's actually a viable product. But we're doing a bunch of stuff, and then really our main goal right now is to sort of become more of a marketing conduit for larger corporations to market through us, because of what we're doing. We're getting on ground level. So like our tangible reach is not directly super high, but the companies we use and we associate with have an enormous reach. So like you saw the Hoonigan video, right?
Of course,
it's not my video, that's Hoonigan's video, but it's still over 1 million views. So like we still reached over 1 million on that. Holly Performance did a thing on us. That's almost 4 million views. And then literally every single major media outlet, Jalopnik, Speed Society, Smoke and Tire, all of these things have done multiple features on us. So because we're actually on ground level, hitting the streets, talking with the people, going to the events, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing, these large corporations just can't actually do. So to reach our market, they could run cold targeted ads to reach all the same people we reach, but it's exactly that. It's a cold ad. Whereas if they market through me, you're using my brand integrity to sell their product to my market. It means a lot more if I say, lifetime LED lights are the brightest lights on the planet, which they're great. But it means more coming from me to my audience than lifetime LED going to my audience.
That's right. Absolutely. You're endorsing it, and you're a user of the product. You're in the grassroots. you understand what the average buyer consumer is looking for, and you are one as well.
Exactly. And, I myself have a high brand integrity. So, we've been approached by a couple of companies that, they made a pretty nice offer. But in the end of the day, it just went against my principles that, I couldn't promote that product, with a clean conscience.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Now, so, you're the one who has to look in the mirror when you shave. That's how I see it.
Yeah, you gotta. You gotta be able to look at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter how much money they threw at us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess there's probably a line there too, but so that's kind of right where we're at. We're working with a large media company right now. We're doing our own little, basically it's a YouTube show. We've submitted for approval for Amazon Prime. And apparently we had some problems with the subtitling, so we got to fix that. But it'll be on Amazon Prime. Right now we got a couple episodes on YouTube with Busted Knuckle Films.
Okay.
They are a 500,000 subscriber channel. They get almost 500 million views a year. So it's a big outlet, and we've got a little show called Death Wish with them. And so far, it's sort of just been almost like a fancy vlog, in a way, of my trips and my experiences with these strangers and breaking down. And we do a little bit of build stuff on there. We don't go super detailed on, how-tos. But, that's sort of why Vague Industries is doing everything. And that's why it's vague. We do hot rods. We do pro mega trucks and rock racers. And we're also doing... becoming a marketing conduit, trying to do paid product integration into our shows, and it's just a lot of fun. If it's not fun, we're not doing it.
Right. Yeah, that's the way to do it. And I think that in anything, if you are true to yourself and you enjoy what you're doing, everything else will fall into place.
I agree with that. So there was last year, at the end of the year, I was invited to this exclusive, invite-only, I don't even know what you want to call it, a marketing seminar or something. It was weird because, I'm not super well off, but I'm self-made. I'm proud of who I am. But, I'm still grassroots dude. And I was at this place, invited by the host of this event, sitting in a room full of very successful, millionaires and billionaires and all these marketing gurus, and I was kind of sort of placed on a pedestal. It was odd for me because I felt like I was out of place. And, the guy's pointing at me saying, you need to be like this. This guy is the model of authenticity. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly because I'm doing this stuff whether anyone's watching or not. So might as well get as many people to watch as we can.
Right. But you're being yourself, and you like being yourself, and you're good at it,
right,
obviously, and you enjoy it. And I think that oftentimes people get very caught up in what the facade is working or what the formula is, and they maybe lose a bit of who they once were. And I think that's a credit to you just staying your true north.
Yeah, I think that's huge in everything, and not just in automotive entertainment. Just literally everything. You will be successful if you are just you, but 110% you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without that. And I think that in the end, people can see through the shellac and the gloss if it's not real.
Time.
Yeah.
You don't even have to. You be three degrees off of who you really are, and it's night and day visible. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth to that for sure. I'm glad that you actually went down and mentioned about Smoking Tire and the Jalopnik and the Busted Knuckle Films and things. Death Wish. I mean, those are. I think that's important because I always want to help cross promote for my guests and know that they'll probably do the same. It's again part of that community. But are there any other channels or ways that people that are really interested in learning more about you, Josh, and what you've done can find you?
Well, when is this going to be published? Because I'm under non-disclosure and exclusivity contract right now for a show we're doing. But
okay.
When do you think this will be published?
What does the NDA allow and prevent? Because I was actually shoehorning you. I was going to shoehorn you in to next Tuesday night.
Okay. Yeah, no, it'll be September. So we're doing something with a major on-demand thing to be able to see a little more content on that. But, just social. We're on Facebook, Instagram. I just started jumping on TikTok because that's an exploding platform right now.
Okay.
That's where we put all the stuff. You want to keep up. It's vague industries and vague industries on Facebook and on Instagram. And, we do stories which are live, current, and then, if you're paying attention real close, you'll sort of have a good idea on what's coming on Busted Knuckles' YouTube channel, which would be our Death Wish show. But like that 13,000-mile trip we did in 6 weeks,
yeah,
I drove this 1,100 horse Toyota Hilux from New Hampshire to Dallas, to LA, where I dropped the truck off at a buddy's house. I got a 1966 Chevy C10 running. I drove that in stock form all the way out to Dallas, where I did a turbocharged 5.3 and a 5-speed swap in it. I drove that back to Tucson, where I lowered it and put disc brakes on it and power brakes, and then continued to LA, where I grabbed my Hilux, my buddy, editor of Hot Rod Magazine, and a few others, and we cannonballed from LA to Las Vegas for Holly LS Fest for a couple of days. But on the very original trip out in the Hilux to LA, I blew it up in Phoenix.
Oh.
I was on another podcast out there, C10 Talk with Ronnie, and he's like, "You got to give me a ride in this thing after we're done with the show." I'm like, yeah, no problem. I beat the crap out of that thing all the way across the country. Showed no mercy. And I made it halfway around his block. And next thing you know, I got rod knocked because I'm dumb, I guess. I don't know. So I had to make friends who had a shop, and I lived in that dude's shop for 2 days while I pulled the engine out and put a new crank and rods in it. And, the kindness of strangers. There again, I'm in Phoenix, and this dude was Jason Bowman, Big Ten. He's like, yeah, you can use my shop, no big deal. I'll clean up, of course. Then some strangers were like, yeah, I can get you a crankshaft. I got a rod for you. I'll bring you some bearings. You get on social and be like, I'm busted, and they just show up. It's crazy. Yeah. It's so crazy. People just want to help.
Yeah.
And rebuilt the engine there. So 6 weeks, 2 full builds. We also did a junkyard resurrection on a 4-wheel drive Cutlass that had been sitting for 10 years. We didn't leave the junkyard until it ran and drove out of the junkyard, beat it in the desert until it died, and then, most of the stuff's on film, so, it was all on our stories. So if you're on the social platforms at all, you'll see a lot of sneak previews before it's actually in production and published on Busted Knuckles' channel there.
Awesome. That is so great. Very cool. Well, I know we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I see, as we said before, and with your future growth and things, it'll be probably even harder to be able to get you back on the show as quickly. But anything else that you want to leave the Cars of Carlisle listeners with? I mean, we have fans not only all over the country but all over the world. But I think that you've kind of epitomized that hot rod American dream, where crisscrossing our great country multiple times and making new friends at every turn. Anything else that you'd like to share with the crew here?
I don't think anything new. I just sort of reiterating the fact that, don't be scared to just go do it. You have never not made it yet. You've made it every time. You're still here.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Don't be so scared of what other people are going to think.
Yeah, and we can overanalyze, and like you said, sometimes we just I'll paraphrase what you said, maybe halfway into the show, but just about you have to know when to release control and kind of ease up on the grip.
Yep, 100%. 38 Special said it best. Hold on loosely, but don't let go.
That's right. Immortalized back in that 80s song. It's a good one.
You're welcome.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for spending time with us from beautiful Keene, New Hampshire. And if I'm planning to come up this fall, and I will definitely coax you for a scary ride in the Hilux if possible.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll do something dumb. Look me up, man.
And we are back to Studio A. A big thanks to Josh Mazerolle. We are hoping to get back up to the New Hampshire area, and I would definitely love to have a ride in his Toyota Hilux for sure. So we cannot thank Josh enough. Good to have a friend like that in the automotive hobby business, and we'll be talking with him again, most likely multiple episodes over the coming 12 to 18 months. Today's trivia question was simply this. What was the first year of production for the Toyota Hilux? Answer to that is the first generation started in 1968. And Toyota gave the marketing name Hilux for really a series of light commercial vehicles that were marketed and produced mainly for the Japanese markets, and it covered everything from pickup trucks and cab chassis variants. But in 1976, for the North American market, they essentially dropped the Hilux marketing name and went more with just the truck, pickup truck, compact truck, etc. And it then began to morph into what we now know as the SR5, which was essentially shorthand for Sport Rally 5-speed. So now you know a little bit more about the Hilux name than perhaps you did before the show started. So we're at the end of this episode and want to say a big thanks to all of you, Cubers. And I would also like to give a warm welcome to 2 new fans out of the Winchester, Virginia area. Thinking of you ladies, and really appreciate you being fans of the show. So for now, I'll say drive well, be well, and take care.